Good morning. It is Tuesday, so, temper the goodness of the fact that we're still just starting the week. But last night was game night, and it was session 0 of the Return to Olyndar game. Thought it went very well. We created characters. We've got a nice mix of characters. Maybe not as varied as the original Olyndar group. Everyone did decide on the border bum background, except for one who went wire-blooded. I think in the last game we had a selection across all 3 backgrounds, including the arcane wire-blooded and the middle one. But that's not necessarily a bad thing. It might mean that the group meshes a little bit better. There were certainly some issues with people getting along in that last group. And we had, I think, 4 deaths in the first six sessions. So, having a bit of common ground is not a bad thing. We do have a paladin. Happy about that. We do have a warlock. Happy about that. We almost had a ranger as well. If we had had a paladin of the order, a warlock, and an enclave ranger, we would have unlocked basically all of the organizational-based quest lines. So they got 2 out of the 3. That's a good thing. Race-wise, we have a Warforged, which will be very interesting to see, as the Warforged in this world are very early on in their inception. It's only been within the last 10 years or so that any of the Warforged have started awakening. And there are still a lot of Warforged on the planet that do not have an awakening. They are literally just robots. So it will be interesting to interplay at some point whenever this Warforged who escaped society, who went out into the wilderness and who discovered that he was an individual. It will be interesting to see what happens when he comes back into something and encounters a Warforged that is literally a blank slate that just does as it's told, when it's told, and doesn't do anything else. I think it could cause some interesting interplay, which will be nice. We also have a Genasi, or Genasi in the group, which will be interesting. He's obviously a character that is very noticeable. He is a big blue glowing person. He looks a little bit like Dr. Manhattan, if anyone gets that reference. So he will draw attention. So we've got a group with a big robot guy and a big blue glowing guy. And then we have a big paladin. Paladins are very noticeable as well. They wear heavy power armor. Yeah, I think we've got a good mix. We also have a Shu, who are a variant race of humans from another part of the world. So culturally, there'll be some interesting things to mix in there with the character who has arrived in Titan but is not from Titan, who is from a very much more rigid part of the world. I haven't discussed it with the player yet, but the fact that she is Shu and she is a warlock probably explains why she ended up in Titan, because her people are not very fond of magic. So the likelihood is she's going to be an outcast among her own people. So arriving in a city where there is tolerance is going to be something that she'll be able to play off of. Once we had the group, we also have a a gnome techno-wizard. So having a techno-wizard in the group alters play slightly. It means that at some point along the way, they are going to get access to faster travel and a few other extras, like being able to recharge their power cells will mean that they don't have to be as conservative with ammo. Being able to have a vehicle when they need one, or to find a vehicle and then refuel it. Being able to have connectivity, internet access, Wi-Fi basically, in areas that don't normally have that, will mean that things like data pads, tablets, etc., that allow them to access information will be much easier to use. So that's something that is going to benefit them. Obviously, the techno-wizards also have some quite amazing abilities themselves, so that's a bonus for the group. Once we went through the creation side of things, we then went into the accomplishments. Now, I touched on these a bit yesterday. The idea that they would choose having done something, and then they would see the results of that. The ones they chose, I thought, were quite good for the group. They busted up a slave ring. Their explanation for that was that the slaves were being taken in Titan and then pulled out of Titan and sold out in the borderlands. So it was a great way for the paladin, who was from the city, and the others who were from the borderlands to come together. One of them started investigating from one side, one started investigating from the other side, and they met along the way. Decided to stick together after that, and then they... I'm trying to remember now what they did next. Oh, they actually headed back out into the borderland areas and negotiated a trade deal on behalf of Titan and the Magic Zone. They basically they managed to get the groups together to talk about a deal that will mean that more trade will move back and forth between the two areas, which should lower hostility between the two groups some. So that's quite beneficial, quite positive for them. And then finally, they went back into the city, and they managed to stop a bombing that was, in fact, they discovered, or at least believe, the rumor is that it was a frame job, that someone actually planted the bomb in order to blame someone else, in order to degrade relations between Titan and the magic users. So, obviously, by stopping that, they've managed to again reinforce that relationship between the two sides and bring them closer to peace. Not necessarily to peace, but closer to peace. We also had a bit of good interplay there where I basically took the group through and we determined in each of those three instances who did something really good, who did something that was almost really bad, and that gives them a bit of background to play off of. This is something that I really want to try to do more of, is that even though we're starting with session 1, we now already have things to talk about that the group did in the past. Yeah, we already did this. We already did that. Do you remember when you did this? It will mean that the characters start out with that little bit more of a bond than they would have had otherwise. It means we don't spend the first 3 sessions going, well, I don't trust you because I just got here. You know, we can skip past that. We can assume that happened during the slave trade mission, and they've gotten past it now. That's why they kept working together. So, hopefully, benefit from that. And yeah, there we are. That was our session 0. We talked about what equipment, magic items they got. They spent some money, they bought some things, and we called it a night. The characters are nearly finished. Pardon me. A couple people are finishing them up through the week. People are writing backstories, backgrounds for them. I have a few conversations to have with players about things their character would know that others don't. Yeah, and there we are. We will be picking up next week with session 1, where I believe the group has already decided that they want to head into the magic zone, where they've noticed there are a number of missions, quests, rumors to follow up on, and see where we go from there. Until then, have a good week. Take care of yourselves. Like, subscribe, all that kind of stuff. And I'll see you later.